Look at almost any depiction of Lord Shiva, and you will see a massive serpent tightly coiled around his neck. We accept it as a standard piece of mythology, but rarely do we stop to ask who this specific creature is, or what exact physical actions he took to earn a permanent place on the body of a supreme deity. The answer starts far away from the heavens, deep within the subterranean realm of Patala. This was a literal underworld, a place entirely cut off from the light of the sun. Patala was ruled by a singular biological anomaly, Vasuki. He was a serpent of staggering, almost incomprehensible scale. His anatomy was so vast that his body could comfortably wrap around the entire circumference of the earth. Embedded within each of his massive hoods were extremely rare, radiant gems. In an environment devoid of natural sunlight, these biological stones acted as the sole light source, illuminating the entire subterranean ecosystem. Physical dominance on this scale usually breeds a tyrant. However, Vasuki possessed a trait far rarer than venom, a terrifying, quiet capacity to absorb immense physical damage so that others wouldn't have to. To understand how that endurance was tested, we have to look at the geopolitical collapse happening above ground. The gods were experiencing a rapid, systemic weakening. Stripped of their cosmic influence, they watched helplessly as the demon faction aggressively assumed total control over the universe. Facing total extinction, the gods consulted Lord Vishnu. He offered a single, highly dangerous solution. They had to dive into the cosmic ocean and extract the Amrita, the raw nectar of immortality. Drinking it was the only mathematical way to restore the balance of power. This schematic shows the engineering required. The gods had to use a colossal landmass, Mount Mandara, as the central churning rod. They managed to place the mountain vertically in the ocean, but they hit a wall. They had no rotational mechanism to actually make it spin. Notice the glowing missing connection indicator around the mountain's midsection. The gods and demons lacked a tether. To generate enough torque to churn a literal ocean, they needed a physical cable with a tensile strength high enough to avoid snapping under the weight of a spinning continent. Universal salvation was completely stalled by a logistical bottleneck. The gods realized there was exactly one living creature in existence long enough and strong enough to bridge that gap. The king of the gods personally descended into the dark depths of Patala. He approached Vasuki and delivered the pitch. The heavens needed the Serpent King to leave his realm and act as the biological rope for the mountain. Vasuki understood the basic physics of the request immediately. Taking a colossal, jagged rock, wrapping his soft tissue around it, and spinning it at high velocity would generate devastating friction. It would likely tear his anatomy apart. He agreed anyway, not out of a desire for glory, but out of cold logic. If the gods failed to secure the nectar, the demons would consolidate their power, and universal annihilation was a statistical certainty. The mechanical setup was brutal. The demons anchored themselves to Vasuki's head. The gods dug their heels in at his tail. As both factions began moving in opposite directions, the serpent's body pulled completely taut against the rough stone. As the mountain accelerated, the physical toll skyrocketed. The friction tore through Vasuki's scales. The sheer compressive force on his internal organs was so agonizing that he began expelling literal fire from his mouth with every exhalation. Every rotation of the mountain, every inch closer to saving the universe, relied entirely on the agonizing endurance of a single creature being crushed against the rock. This chart maps the expected nectar extraction, but at the critical moment, the data spikes uncontrollably. It expelled Halahal, a world-ending cosmic poison. The lethal radius rapidly expands, consuming the safety zones. Facing immediate death, both factions drop the serpent and flee. Into this absolute panic steps Lord Shiva. He descends from the mountains, radiating complete calm, and walks straight past the retreating armies to the exact source of the toxicity. Shiva scoops the lethal poison into his hands and drinks it. Rather than letting it destroy him from the inside, he intentionally crushes his airway, trapping the toxic energy permanently in his throat. Vasuki endured the grinding weight of the mountain to turn the tides. Shiva absorbed the toxic payload to protect the air. In both cases, securing the future of a universe required a willing vessel for its most lethal pains. With the toxic threat neutralized, the factions returned to their stations. The brutal churning resumed, grinding Vasuki against the rock for hours, until finally the golden nectar of immortality breached the surface of the cosmic ocean. The immediate aftermath was pure jubilation. The gods seized the nectar, drank it, and secured their absolute dominance over the cosmos. But pan away from the divine celebration. Look at the sidelines. Lying in the shadows is the battered, bleeding, and utterly exhausted body of Vasuki, discarded on the shoreline like a used piece of rope. History often reveals a recurring pattern. The figures who endure the most punishing physical labor are the first to be forgotten the moment the prize is secured. Almost everyone abandoned him. Lord Shiva, however, separated himself from the celebrating crowds. He walked away from the victorious gods and approached the broken serpent in the dark. Shiva looked down at Vasuki and acknowledged the truth that the others ignored. The entire operation, the survival of the gods, and the continuation of the universe depended strictly on the silent, tearing flesh of a snake. Shiva refused to let Vasuki fade into the background. By supreme decree, he elevated the serpent from a forgotten mechanical tool to a permanent fixture. He wrapped Vasuki around his own neck, placing him on the body of a god as a symbol of supreme strength. The gods spent all their energy chasing a potion to ensure they would never die. Vasuki spent his energy silently bearing the crushing weight of a mountain to ensure others could live. The nectar gave the gods an endless lifespan, but enduring hidden, excruciating pain to hold a fracturing world together earned Vasuki a much higher form of immortality.